Happy Movember, everybody. Welcome back to another Fantasy Puck video. Today, I'm going to be breaking down my favorite odds going into week 5 of fantasy hockey. Hopefully, your team is doing good in the early going, and if not, I'm going to be giving you a list of players to help bolster your roster and really push you up the fantasy rankings. It's going to be a good video, guys, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Starting this video off with my favorite forward odds. There's going to be about 10 forwards I'm going to be breaking down here across all leagues. I really want to be trying to dig more into those deeper leagues, but also want to be hitting those 12 to 14 team leagues. And starting us off with Leo Carlsson of the Anaheim Ducks. Now, the only drawback to Carlsson is his shot rate isn't that impressive, and he's only center eligible, but still at just 16% roster, Carlsson is the forefront of the Anaheim Ducks offense, playing line 1, power play 1, averaging over 17 minutes per night, and has 6 points in the early going with 2 points on the power play. The biggest thing for me here with Carlsson is he was a former second overall pick, so there's still going to be a lot of upside there, and this Ducks team is pretty much wide open in the offensive lineup right now, and I don't see Carlsson's opportunities skated on line 1, power play 1 being taken anytime soon. So I definitely want to be getting in early here on Carlsson. If you have availability to add him to your roster at just center eligible, he's definitely someone in those deeper leagues that I think you should definitely be looking to add. Rickard Rakell has been a great story over the last little bit. It's crazy to see in one of my leagues. He's like a top 60 player right now, and I was able to scoop him up off free agency, and hopefully you are too. Rickard Rakell adds quite a bit of flexibility here with the center right wing eligibility. He's just under 25% rostered, which is crazy to see because his peripherals have been extremely good. And recently, with the injury to Bryan Rust, Rakell has moved up to a line 1 role with Crosby and on the top power play unit, which really hasn't been that good, but still Rakell's peripherals are making him a very, very valuable asset. Now, his minutes right now are about 1642. Just in the most recent night on Thursday, he played 22 minutes in that overtime win over the Ducks, where Dostal was absolutely insane. But I digress. Back to Rickard Rakell, whose minutes have been scaling up since the injury to Bryan Rust. He has 6 goals, averaging 1642 time on ice, 33 shots, 20 hits, and 11 blocks. And in that game against Anaheim, he had 6 shots and 4 hits. So even if he's not getting you there on the score sheet, he still has the upside to really produce with his peripherals, giving him an extremely solid floor. Fabian Zetterlund of the San Jose Sharks was a very interesting deep league sleeper for me going into the season. I drafted him almost in the last round in the Fantasy Puck Patreon League, and he has been extremely good for me so far. So he's left wing, right wing eligible on a San Jose Sharks team that is desperate for some offense. The drawback to Zetterlund, and he is currently on the second power play unit, but his peripherals have been extremely good, and he's definitely worth rostering. 1646 average time on ice, very good for a second line power play 2 player. 6 goals in the early going with 27 shots on goal, 26 hits, and 9 blocks. The peripherals have been phenomenal so far from Zetterlund, and he's currently being undervalued, I would say, in fantasy right now. With Matthew Knies, a guy that may be overvalued in fantasy because he's a Leafs player, but still, I've been finding in the early going so far that left wing has been a difficult position to fill on my roster, and Matthew Knies has been a very, very interesting case so far in the early going. Just 31% rostered on Yahoo, so you may be able to scoop him up in 10 to 12 team leagues. He's currently skating line 1, and he's on the top power play unit now with all the changes we've seen to that Toronto power play. It's been kind of all over the map, but as of right now, Knies is on the power play unit with Matthews and Marner. And to me, I likely see that power play getting priority over the second unit that has Nylander and Tavares. His minutes are starting to scale up too at 17-13 per night with 6 goals, 27 shots, and 26 hits. So very, very good underlying peripherals, and we're going to start seeing the point production continue to scale up as long as he plays on the top line with Matthews and Marner, which seems to be like a staple, and on the top power play unit. Connor Garland here was in my must-adds last week. We didn't really see much change in his ownership percentage over the last week, but as long as he's still remaining on the second line with Elias Pettersson, who has been struggling mightily in the early going, luckily, I don't own him in any leagues, but if you've owned him right now, it's been a struggle. But with Garland here, he's just 13% rostered on a team that has one of the league's best power plays. So he's currently skating on the top power play unit, played almost 18 minutes per night, and has 7 points and 2 points on the power play so far this season. I assume if he continues to play in this deployment on the line 2, power play 1, and continuing to see good minutes, we're going to start seeing these peripherals and his point upside go up and continue to scale in the right direction. Now, talking about teams that are desperate for offense, Boston Bruins. If you're a fan of the Bruins, it has not been good in the early going. They lost 8-2 to Carolina on Thursday night. Right now for Zacha, just what I'm seeing is that his roster percentage is very low for a guy that's center right wing eligible. He came off back-to-back 60-plus point seasons, and the minutes and deployment are both there. It's just a matter of this top line starting to produce and the top power play to start scoring goals. As long as he continues to skate alongside David Pastrnak, who was a 110-point player last season, a former 60-goal scorer, we're going to start seeing Pavel Zacha's production begin to scale up. And you want to get in early before he has a couple multi-point games in a row, and then you're going to start seeing that roster percentage go back to where it really should be. His minutes are very good so far, 19-15 per night. 3 points this season. That's probably why his ownership percentage is so low. He's just been struggling. If you're an Elias Lindholm owner, it's pretty much the same thing. I think he just came off of a 6 pointless streak, a 6-game pointless streak. So just not good so far for these Bruins players, but hopefully this offense starts to regress back to the mean and back to where we've seen them in the past. But 3 points, 23 shots on goal for Zacha. The biggest thing for me, again, as long as he's skating the line 1, power play 1, I'm going to have interest. Sean Monahan here has been super good. I mean, they've had a lot of injuries right now for the Columbus Blue Jackets, especially with Kent Johnston going down, who was logging over 20 minutes per night. And now Monahan has stepped into that line 1, power play 1 role, playing 19:35 per night with 9 points and 31 shots on goal. The shots on goal continue to scale up. And honestly, this team's offense has been a lot better than I expected going into the season, especially with Jenner injured and with Kent Johnson going down with injury. But Monahan has filled that top line role very well so far this season. If you were able to add him, he's been very good for you. And if he's still available in your free agency, it's definitely someone I'd look to roster if you have openings at the center position. Now, like I said, the left wing position is very, very empty right now in fantasy, and it's really hard to find players to fill that role. I shouted out Pavel Dorofeyev in the last must-add. I'm going to shout him out again today because he's still 10% rostered. He's line 2. He's power play 1. This Vegas offense has been scoring goals at will right now. His minutes are 15:34 per night, but with the recent injury to Victor Olofsson about 2 weeks ago, Dorofeyev has stepped into a power play 1 role, and we're starting to see those minutes scale. He had a very, very good preseason, and a lot of people are on him because of that, and he's pretty much translated that into the regular season so far with 9 points, 3 points on the power play, and 32 shots on goal. The shots on goal are very impressive from Dorofeyev, who historically, when he was playing 3rd and 4th line in Vegas, he did have pretty good shot volume numbers, so it's very encouraging to see this so far in the early going, as well as the point production on top of it. Josh Norris, just center eligible right now, so a little bit less flexibility, but 29% rostered, skating line 2, power play 1, almost 19 minutes per night. He's about top 50 in the NHL for minutes for forwards. He has 8 points, 3 points on the power play. The biggest draw for me right now with Norris is this hit volume so far. He's starting to pick it up in terms of adding hits, and he has 14 shots on goal, which are relatively low. But 14 hits and 14 blocks are impressive for a guy that is usually known to be a goal scorer. But as long as he continues to produce these underlying peripherals and put up points and scale the top power play unit, there's a very, very encouraging factors to why you should be drafting or adding Josh Norris. We're not in drafts anymore. Gabe Vilardi, the thumbnail on my sleepers video, my original sleepers video, I was very excited about him going into this season. But so far, the peripherals just haven't really been there for Vilardi, and we're really starting to see that roster percentage scale down. But as long as we're seeing Kyle Connor pop off, he's been probably one of the best players in the NHL so far in the early going. Vilardi gets interest for me. He's skating on the top line with Scheifele, he's skating on the top line with Connor, and he's on the top power play unit. And like I always say, I've said it about 4 times this video, as long as they're getting very good deployment, and it seems like Winnipeg has a very good record in the early going so far, so I don't think they're going to be changing up their lineups too much here. He's still playing 18 minutes and 33 seconds per night, 8 points and 3 points on the power play. His point production has been going up over the last couple of games. He's getting more offensive touches, so a lot to like here from Vilardi, who was a sleeper for me going into the season. I just hope to see this shot volume continue to scale up because he has the upside to be a 30-goal scorer and someone that I do have a future on to score 30-plus goals this season. Jumping over to defensemen now, I don't really like having players that are very high rostered, and I usually like to keep it to under 50%, and Brandt Clarke just hits that under 50% rostered. Now, he's currently skating on the 3rd pair, but he is skating on the top power play unit, which has been very good as of late. 18 minutes and 10 seconds average time on ice. We're starting to see his minutes go up to about 20 per night, which is where we wanted it to be from Clarke. In the preseason, the coach mentioned that when the Doughty injury happened, that it's going to be tough for Brandt Clarke to see over 15 minutes per night, which seemed crazy to me. And I don't know if he's been below 15 minutes in a game, but maybe just some words of encouragement to kind of light a fire for Brandt Clarke to really break out. And that's what we've seen so far in the early going. So if you're in those shallower leagues, you're going to be rostering a guy that's over a point per game so far this season with 5 points on the top power play. But not only is he producing on the power play, but his 21 shots and 19 blocks are very, very solid. If he's not producing on the power play or putting up points, he's still contributing in the shot category and the blocks. So a lot to like here from Brandt Clarke, who has been an early league winner so far this season. Kaiden Guhle has returned back to the lineup as of Thursday night. 26% rostered, so a little bit higher than I want to see here. But he's a guy that's going to be skating on the top pair. He has that locked in and is averaging just under 22 minutes per night. But the big draw from Kaiden Guhle so far this season is he's averaging 4 blocks per game. So if you're desperate for blocks, or if you're in a points league that counts blocks as a high scoring category, I know in the Fantasy Puck Patreon League, it's 1 total point for a block. So a player that's blocking a lot, as much as Kaiden Guhle is going to have a very, very solid floor. And the early point production has been encouraging with 4 points through 6 games so far. With Jamie Drysdale here, the minutes, like the Torts minutes, are absolutely crazy. If you own Tippett or Frost and you're seeing their minutes go all over the place, it's the same thing with Jamie Drysdale. But with Cam York out, Jamie Drysdale's minutes have continued to scale up. He's at averaging just over 18 minutes per night. And over the last couple of games, we're seeing minutes scale up into the 22 mark. So very encouraging there from Jamie Drysdale, who seems to be a lock on this Philly top power play unit. It's rare to find guys under 10% that are skating on the top power play unit, so you definitely want to look at scooping up Jamie Drysdale, who has 3 points all in the power play so far in the early going, but 21 blocks to add, which is an encouraging sign from Drysdale. Now, a defenseman I'm very, very excited about so far this season has been Simon Edvinsson, one of the top defenseman prospects going into the season. You guys know, if you followed the NHL for a while, the Red Wings and their European prospects always seem to pan out. They also have Axel Sandin-Pellikka, who should be very exciting for the Red Wings. But with Simon Edvinsson here, his minutes are scaling up very fast, skating on the top pair with Moritz Seider. He's also on the top penalty kill. 21 minutes and 22 seconds average time on ice. We might see this scale up to about 23 very soon. 12 shots on goal, 13 hits, and he's been a block machine with 24 blocks in the early going. Now, the biggest thing I want to say with Edvinsson here is that I still don't think Seider has the full hold on the top power play unit. And from talking with fans that are Red Wings fans, they've been telling me that Edvinsson seems to be the most offensive defenseman that they have. And with David Gustafsson experiment just failing, he's been healthy scratch. He hasn't really been in the lineup. I do think that there is an opportunity that we could see Simon Edvinsson moving up to the top power play unit, which would significantly boost his value. So someone to watch, but as long as these minutes continue to scale up to about 22 plus per night, his peripherals will back him up in terms of the point production. So a lot to like here from Simon Edvinsson. Lastly, Olen Zellweger at 4% rostered. Again, another pretty highly touted defenseman prospects. Honestly, I think all 5 here are pretty highly touted defenseman prospects. So I got the youth in this video, but Olen Zellweger here at just 4% rostered. He's currently skating on the top pair and power play 1. He's averaged 21 minutes and 5 seconds time on ice over the last 5 games. 3 points, 1 point in the power play, and 20 shots on goal. This Ducks team just isn't really doing it for me offensively, but I think it's worth taking a lottery ticket ad on Olen Zellweger here, who's been moved up to the top pair and is skating on the top power play unit. Again, it's rare to find defensemen under 10% on the top power play unit, but with Zellweger, we're finding defensemen under 5% on the top power play unit. So in those deeper leagues, in your 14, 16 team leagues that are watching this video, Zellweger is definitely a guy that I would be looking to roster right now, with the upside to be maybe a 40-point player this season. It's really contingent on how that power play produces. Lastly, guys, everyone's favorite segment, the goalies, the most difficult position in all of fantasy sports, in my opinion. Now, there hasn't been many major developments in terms of goaltending, but I just want to shout out some goalies that I think could have a little bit more upside moving forward. So with Calvin Pickard here, now he did start on Thursday night and had a very good start. Just 1 goal against on the road. And Stuart Skinner's been struggling in the early going. I don't really know what's going on with some of these goaltenders. Georgiev, Skinner, Saros hasn't been too good. I feel like they're all going to eventually regress back to the mean. Maybe not Georgiev, but with Stuart Skinner here in the early going at 3.51 goals against average, at 872 save percentage, I think moving forward we may see a 60-40 split in the short term. Pickard's been pretty solid over the last couple of games, and if he continues to be good, I think Edmonton continues to roll him out because they are desperate for wins in the early going. with Spencer Martin here, with Freddie Anderson now week to week, Martin becomes the goalie 2 in Carolina. I think Kochetkov will still start maybe 65% of the games, meaning there still will be games available for Spencer Martin at just 0% rostered. So if you're in a deeper league and you're in a category league, the reason why you want to be rostering Martin is because Carolina just doesn't give up a lot of goals. And that he'll pretty much, when he starts, it'll likely be in an easier matchup. I feel like Kochetkov's going to get the difficult one, and Martin's going to be getting the easier matchups. And he's on a top 3 to 5 team, so a win is likely in his matchup. And then on top of that, the goals against and save percentage contribution should still be solid from a guy who, honestly, when he was waived, I was very, very surprised, but good for Carolina now. I'm having a pretty solid backup goaltender. Now with Elvis Merzlikins here, I'm a Daniil Tarasov guy through and through, but Merzlikins seems to be a very streaky goalie, and so far in the early going, since he's returned back from injury, he has been streaking like he usually does. So he's just 10% rostered on a team that gives up a lot of volume but doesn't really score. Well, they've been scoring a little bit, but I mean, I think moving forward, we may see these high danger chances against continue to scale up, as Merzlikins may be struggling a little bit, but definitely worth taking a flyer on right now. I've added him in one of my leagues. 4 games started this season with a 925 save percentage and a 205 goals against average. So maybe we start to see some regression from Merzlikins, but he's a streaky goalie. So if you can add him during a streak, you may get some positive value out of him. Well, Samuel Ersson here, he's under 20% roster, and he's a starting goalie on a Philadelphia Flyers team that, similar to the Columbus Blue Jackets, just kind of give up a lot. But I still think, I mean, under 20% rostered, it's rare to find a starting goaltender. So he's a guy that's going to be giving you quite a bit of volume. I have added him in the Fantasy Puck Patreon League for some volume just this week to help boost my team in terms of the points for. But something to caution moving forward, he's still at a 3.00 goals against average and an 891 save percentage. I think it'd be a little bit more encouraging to see like a 270 and a 905, which I think is a little bit more applicable for Ersson here. But I mean, if those were his numbers, that roster percentage would be higher. So he's been good as of late, and someone I would definitely be looking to add if you're desperate for goaltending. I know there's been a lot of struggles so far in the early going, so these are some options I think that could help your team moving forward. That will do it for the Week 5 Must-Add Players video. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Thank you for watching, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.